The wife noticed it first. The cross on the wall above their bed had hung there for 9 years, and one autumn she began to feel, without being able to say why, that the room was no longer hers after dark. She told her husband she was imagining things. She was not. They had bought the crucifix at a furniture store in a frame matched to the paint they had chosen for the bedroom. It was beautiful. It was the right shape. Christ was on it, his arms open, his head bowed. And they had assumed, the way most people assume, that because it looked holy, it was doing something holy. They prayed beneath it. They slept beneath it. They thought of it as a guard set over the most defenseless hours of their lives, the hours when the body lets go and the will goes quiet and a man is closest to a child again. For 9 years, that cross watched them sleep and protected them from nothing at all. They did not know that yet. They only knew that something had begun to press against the edge of the room, patient, unhurried, as though it had finally understood that the door it had been waiting at was not locked. It had never been locked. The lock they trusted was a picture of a lock. Stay with me, because the difference between those two things is the difference I want to put in front of you tonight, and most people never hear it until it is very late. My name is Chad Ripperger. I am a Catholic priest. For many years now, the bishops who have asked me to do this work have sent me into homes and into the lives of people who arrived believing they had done everything right. I was trained in the rite of exorcism, in the older discipline of it, and I have spent more hours than I can count in rooms where good people sat across from me and described slowly the small things they had stopped noticing. I am going to tell you about a household, but understand what I am giving you. It is a composite. I have changed and combined details to protect real families, because the seal over this work is grave and I will not break it. The pattern, though, is real. I have watched it repeat in different houses in different cities among people who would never have guessed they had anything in common. I am not here to frighten you, and I am not telling you the enemy is behind every difficulty of your life. Most of what burdens you is ordinary. What I am telling you is narrower and older than fear. It is that the things the church gives us to protect us are real, that they work in a particular way and not in the way the world imagines, and that a great many people have quietly traded the real thing for something that only resembles it. They keep the resemblance on the wall and they sleep. The husband contacted me through his parish priest, which is the only way these things should ever begin. He was a careful man, an engineer, the kind who measures twice. He told me his wife had stopped sleeping. He told me their 2 children had begun waking in the night and coming to the parents' door, not crying exactly, but standing there, the younger one saying that the man in the corner did not like the new prayers. There was no new prayer. They had not changed anything. And that, he said, was what unsettled him most, because he had built his sense of safety on the idea that they were a Catholic home, that they had a cross over the bed, that they said grace, that the house was the kind of house God would naturally defend. He used that word, naturally. As though protection were a climate the house sat in rather than a gift that had to be asked for and received. I let him talk. When he was done, I asked him one question. I asked him whether the crucifix above his bed had ever been blessed by a priest. There was a long silence on the line. He did not know. He had never thought to wonder. It had come in a frame with a price on the back, and it had hung there for 9 years, looking exactly like the thing. For 400 years, the church provided the laity with specific prayers to address situations in their homes that they could not explain. Most parishes stopped teaching them after 1965. Now, they have all been compiled into a concise, practical guide. Keep it near the door and read the first page tonight. You will find the link to get the book in the description and in the first pinned comment. It was not. That silence is the whole story. I have heard that silence in a dozen homes. It is the sound of a person realizing that the wall they leaned on was painted on. Let me tell you what a sacramental is, because the word has gone soft in people's mouths and they use it for anything churchy. A sacramental is a sacred sign instituted by the church which prepares us to receive grace and disposes us to cooperate with it. That is the precise meaning. It is not a charm. It is not a battery that stores divine electricity in the shape of a cross. And here's the part almost no one has been taught. The sacraments work ex opere operato, by the work worked, which means that a validly administered sacrament gives grace by the power of Christ, regardless of the holiness of the priest or the recipient, provided no obstacle is placed. Baptism washes whether the deacon is a saint or not, but a sacramental does not work that way. A sacramental works ex opere operantis ecclesiae, by the work of the one working, and the one working is the church. Its power comes from the prayer of the church, the intercession of the whole body of Christ, applied through the act of blessing, and it meets us, the user, according to our own disposition. Two things, then, must be present. The church's blessing must have been pronounced over the object, and the person using it must be living in a state that lets that prayer take hold. Grace, a life turned toward God and not away from Him. So consider what that family had. They had the second condition imperfectly and the first not at all. They were trying to live as Catholics. They went to Mass. They said grace. Their dispositions were not the problem. The problem was that the object they trusted carried no prayer of the church whatsoever. No priest had ever stood before it and asked God, in the name of the whole church, to make it a means of protection and a sign of Christ's victory. It was a manufactured image. The factory that pressed it cared about the paint matching the bedroom. When the husband said the word naturally, he had put his finger on the exact error without knowing it. He believed the cross protected the way a smoke detector protects, by being present, by being installed, by hanging on the correct wall. But a blessed crucifix is not present like furniture. It is present like a prayer that someone is still praying. Take away the prayer and you have the furniture. They had the furniture. Thomas Aquinas treats this with a clarity I wish more priests still taught. He distinguishes in his discussion of the sacraments and the things that surround them between what God does of His own power and what He does through the ministry and prayer of the church. The blessing of an object is the church beseeching God to sanctify a thing for a holy use, and God answering that prayer, binding Himself in His goodness to the intercession of His bride. The church has prayed, so the grace is offered. That is why the form of a blessing in the older books is not a wave of the hand. Open the Rituale Romanum, the book promulgated in 1614 under Paul V, and you will find blessings of astonishing specificity. There is a blessing for a cross, and in it the priest asks that all who pray before... St. Thomas Aquinas wrote more than a dozen questions on how fallen angels operate. Most Catholics have never read one line of it. This archive gathers that teaching, the 1,614 rite, and 4 centuries of documented cases into a single reference. Read it slowly, 1 chapter a night. You will find the link to get the book in the description and in the first posted comment. For this image and venerate it in memory of the Lord's Passion may obtain deliverance and the protection of the same Lord. There is a blessing of water in which salt is exercised and water is exercised and the two are joined. And the prayer asks explicitly that wherever this water is sprinkled, the unclean spirit be driven out and the snares of the hidden enemy be removed. Those are not decorations of language. They are the church putting her whole weight behind a thing. When you hang an unblessed cross, you have hung the shape of all that prayer with none of the prayer inside it. You have the architecture of a fortress with no garrison. I want you to feel the weight of the holy water blessing for a moment, because it is the clearest window into how all of this works. When a priest blesses water according to the older rite, he does not bless the water and stop. He exercises it. He commands, in the name of God, that whatever power of the adversary clings to that element be expelled, and then he prays that the water become an instrument of grace for body and soul, that demons flee from the place where it is used. That blessed water, taken up by a Catholic in a state of grace and used in faith, carries the prayer of the whole church into the corner of a room. A bottle of tap water in a font-shaped dish carries nothing. It looks identical. The eye cannot tell them apart. The enemy can. And this is the thing I needed that engineer to understand. Sitting in his careful house, measuring twice. The enemy is not confused by appearances. He does not see the paint matching the bedroom. He sees whether the prayer of the church is present or absent, and where it is absent, he is unimpressed by the most beautiful crucifix ever carved. The wife asked me, when I finally sat with them, why the trouble had seemed to come at night. Why after midnight? There is no magic hour. The enemy is not bound to a clock. But there is a truth underneath her question that is worth more than a superstition. We are weakest when we are least able to consent to grace, and the deepest hours of sleep are exactly that. During the day, a person prays, works, chooses, turns the will toward God 100 small times. Asleep, the will is quiet. The defenses that depend on our active cooperation go slack. This is why the church has always given us things that pray for us when we cannot pray for ourselves, things that hold the prayer of the whole body over us while our own faculties are dark. A blessed crucifix above the bed is meant to be exactly that. A continuous intercession of the church, hanging there, praying while you cannot. Their cross prayed nothing. So when the household went quiet and the parents' wills went dark, there was a room with the shape of protection in it and no protection at all, and the children, who are honest in the way the young are honest, felt the gap before the adults would let themselves name it. The man in the corner did not like the new prayers, the little one said. There were no new prayers. There was only the first night someone had finally prayed in that house with something real, and the gap had been disturbed. The turn came on an ordinary afternoon. I asked the husband to take the framed crucifix down from the wall and bring it to me. And I want to tell you what happened, because it was not dramatic, and that is the point. He held it in his hands, and he looked at it differently than he ever had. He had treated it for 9 years as the cornerstone of his home's safety, and now he was holding a manufactured object that had never been touched by a single prayer of the church. He was not angry at the object. He was grieving something in himself. He said, very quietly, that he had thought hanging it was enough. That is the false security, exactly, named by the man who had lived inside it. He had thought hanging it was enough, and because he thought he was protected, he had never asked for protection. He had never had the house blessed. He had drifted from confession because a protected man does not feel the urgency of his own soul. The decorative cross had not merely failed to protect him, it had talked him out of seeking the protection that was real. That is the deepest danger of the counterfeit. It is not that it does nothing. It is that it convinces you that you have already done the thing you have not done. I had a real crucifix blessed for them, and I blessed water, and I taught them how to use it. And I want to be careful here, because this is where people go wrong in the other direction. The blessed crucifix went back on the wall above their bed, and the trouble in that house resolved, but not because we had installed a better device. A sacramental is not a stronger charm than the decoration was. If they had hung the blessed crucifix and gone on, neglecting their souls, treating the new object the way they had treated the old one, as a thing that works by hanging there, they would have learned that a sacramental given to a man who will not live in grace is like medicine given to a man who will not stop the poison. The crucifix is not magic. Let me say that as plainly as I can. The power is the prayer of the church meeting a soul that is turned toward God. What changed in that house was not only the object on the wall. It was that the husband went to confession for the first time in years, and the family began again to live in the grace that lets the church's prayer take hold. The blessed crucifix was the servant of that. It was never meant to be the master. So let me tell you what the real strategy is. Because if you take only the object away from this, you will have learned the smaller half. The center of your protection is not anything that hangs on a wall. It is the sacraments themselves, the channels through which Christ gives his own life. Confession first. Because nothing the enemy wants more than for you to carry unconfessed mortal sin while you imagine yourself defended. Our Lord breathed on the apostles and said, "Whose sins you forgive are forgiven them, and whose sins you retain are retained." He gave the church a real authority over sin, and a man who uses it is a man with the door of his soul shut to the enemy. Then the Eucharist, received worthily, which is Christ himself entering you, the strongest thing there is, and received unworthily, a danger and not a help, which is why confession comes first. These are the strategy. Everything else is the servant of these. A blessed crucifix, holy water, the rosary, a blessed medal, these are real, and I want you to use them, but use them as what they are. They are the church praying over your home and your body while you live the life of grace that the sacraments give you. They prepare you for grace and dispose you to cooperate with it. They do not replace the life. The rosary in particular I would put in every home, because in it the whole story of our redemption is prayed through the hands of the mother whom Christ gave us from the cross, and the enemy has never been able to bear her. But the rosary said by a man who will not leave his sin is words in the air. The strategy is grace. The sacramentals serve the strategy. Why is this happening now? Why do I have to explain to grown Catholics what their grandparents knew without being told? I will tell you what I have seen, and I will say it without anger toward the church, because the church is my mother, and I will not strike her. But I will name the wound. Somewhere in the last 60 years, the sacramentals were quietly demoted from instruments of the church's prayer to items of religious decor. The crucifix moved from the thing a priest blessed and a family knelt before to the thing matched to the wall color. The holy water font by the door, refilled from a parish that still blessed water, dried up in 1 million homes and was never refilled. And most people under 50 have never once watched a priest exercise salt and water in the old form. After the council that met from 1962 to 1965, in the confusion that followed it, an enormous amount of practical Catholic life simply was not handed on. I do not blame the council documents for this. I blame the catechetical collapse that came after the failure to teach, so that 2 generations grew up with the externals of the faith and almost none of the mechanics. They kept the crucifix and lost the blessing. They kept the metal and lost the meaning. And here is the part that should make you sit up. The enemy did not need to attack the fortress. He only needed us to forget that the garrison had to be asked for, and then to hang a picture of a garrison and feel safe. The home blessing, once ordinary, became exotic. The priest who would come and bless a house became hard to find and harder to ask. We dismantled the infrastructure of our own protection with our own hands, slowly by neglect, and we kept the decorations so we would not notice the building was empty. Do not let anyone, including the version of you that wants the easy reading of this, turn what I am saying into superstition. I am not telling you to fear an object. I am not telling you that the wrong cross is dangerous or that the right cross is a weapon you point at the dark. The danger was never in the object. It was in the lie the man told himself about the object, that hanging it was enough, that he was covered, that he could let his soul go slack because the wall was handling it. A sacramental is the church praying. A decoration is a man assuring himself he need not pray. The thing on the wall was only ever the place where that lie became visible. Here's what I would have you do, and I would have you begin this week, not someday. Take down every crucifix and holy image and metal in your home that you cannot remember being blessed, and ask a priest to bless them. Most priests will, and gladly, if you ask plainly. If you do not have a crucifix that has been blessed, get one and have it blessed, and put it above your bed where it belongs. Over the hours, you cannot guard yourself. Keep blessed holy water in your home, real holy water from a parish that blesses it well, and use it. Sprinkle the bedrooms, bless your children with it. Make the sign of the cross with it when you rise and when you lie down. Then, and this is the part that matters more than any object, get to confession, and not once. Make it a habit, monthly at least, because the strategy is the state of your soul and the sacramentals only serve a soul in grace. Receive the Eucharist worthily and often. Ask a priest to bless your home, the actual house, room by room, in the right the church has for exactly this. And do not be embarrassed to ask, because it is your inheritance. Consecrate your family to the Sacred Heart and to the Immaculate Heart of His Mother. Pray the Rosary together, out loud, even badly, even tired. And if any of this becomes more than the ordinary work of a Catholic home, if you find yourself in real trouble, do not go looking on the internet for help, and do not handle it alone. Find a sound priest, a good confessor, a steady spiritual director, and let the church do what only the church can do. That order matters. Sacraments first. Sacramentals as their servants. A priest, not a stranger, not a screen. I will leave you with the only thing strong enough to leave you with. The cross is not a decoration, and it was never meant to be a comfort, hung on a wall and forgotten. The cross is the place where Christ defeated death, and a blessed crucifix over your bed is the church holding that victory over you while you sleep, praying the passion of the Lord into the dark hours when you cannot pray for yourself. Athanasius stood almost alone against the whole world for the truth of who Christ is, contra mundum, against the world. And the world was wrong, and the lone man was right, because the truth does not need a majority. You may feel alone in a house where the faith has gone thin. You are not. The whole church prays with you the moment you let her, and the cross she blesses is the sign that the war is already won. Choose Christ, choose His church, choose His sacraments, choose His mother. Choose the cross, and do not look back. Next time I will tell you about the medal so many Catholics wear at their throat, the one that was meant as a vow and has become a habit emptied of its promise, and why the saint who gave it to us attached a condition to it that almost no one keeps anymore.